You and your party have confronted some ruffians in the mean streets of a sprawling city. You've moved past trading insults and are about to begin trading blows. You have won initiative and move up to the one directly in front of you. But instead of attacking him, what else can you do? Hello there and welcome to Dungeons & Dragons Explained. We'll be exploring all things D&D and RPGs. I'll be posting up lots of videos explaining monster lore, game rules, and how to play the game just like this one. So today we will be exploring combat options, particularly what options are presented to you in the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide. So I've decided to make this video for my friends. We've just started playing a new 5th edition game and I'm sure most of them would love to know what else they can do in combat. On top of that, Taking 20 on YouTube has just released a video discussing what he would do to change 5e combat, which is cool. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but I thought I would just present what is already in 5th edition before we go talking about making changes. So moving right into it, aside from attacking and casting a spell, the Player's Handbook actually gives you a few options that anybody can take using their action. So those options are dash, disengage, dodge, help, hide, ready, search, and use an object, as well as a couple options that you can use instead of making an attack when you take the attack option. This is definitely not everything that you could do on your turn, but everything else basically falls under the improvised action category, and your DM will let you know if it's possible and what checks to make if it is. So going through them quickly, dash lets you double your movement speed, disengage lets you move away from opponents without taking attacks of opportunity, dodge makes it so opponents have disadvantage to hit you, help lets you give your ally advantage to do something on their turn, hiding is hiding, and readying is a special action which lets you act outside of your turn if you use your reaction. Searching is focusing on finding something in particular, and using an object is when you need to interact with either a complex object or you're using more than one object that's given in your free object interaction. There'll be more on that later. There's a little more to the rules for some of these actions, but this should give you the general gist of it, and if you want to know more, you can find it in Chapter 9 of the Player's Handbook. Now to the meat of the video, other things you can do when taking the attack action that are not attacks. Now before we continue, I'm going to talk a little bit about the attack action itself. Now when you take the attack action, it lets you make whatever number of weapon attacks your class affords you. For most classes, that's going to be just 1. For some of the more fighty classes, that's 2, and at higher levels, fighters get even more than that. But keep in mind, it's specifically weapon attacks. Just because a spell or something else lets you make an attack roll doesn't mean you can use them in place of your extra attacks. Once you take the attack action, you can only use it to make weapon attacks or something that replaces a weapon attack, like an unarmed strike. Now with that out of the way, here are some things you can do when you take the attack action that aren't attacking. First, there's grappling. You can replace a weapon attack with a grapple check. You can make one of those by using your athletics skill contested by an opponent's athletics or acrobatics skill. If you beat the opponent, then they have gained the grapple condition, which among other things means that their movement speed falls to 0. You can also drag or carry them around, but you'll be doing this at half movement speed unless they are 2 sizes smaller than you. And keep in mind, you do also need a free hand to be grappling something, which means if you're wearing a shield, you're going to have to either drop or put away your weapon before you can grapple a creature. Now, if a creature has been grappled, they can escape it using their action to do the opposite check, which is using athletics or acrobatics opposed to your athletics. Or if either creature is forcefully moved so that the target is no longer within range, then the grapple is also automatically broken. However, if you are the creature doing the grappling, you can choose to break it at any time with no action. Next, we have shoving. Shoving uses the same check as grappling. However, if you succeed, instead of grappling them, you will either push the creature 5 feet away from you or push them to the ground and they'll have the prone condition. Now this is very useful as attacking a prone creature when you're next to it gives you a huge advantage, literally. Now you can also shove enemies into all sorts of compromising positions, like off a cliff, for example, and if you've got multiple attacks, instead of using your entire action, you can replace one of those attacks with a shove so that they are no longer in range to grapple you. So everything I just talked about is from the Player's Handbook, which means most of the time your DM should let you use these options. Now, everything I'm about to talk about is from the Dungeon Master's Guide. So before you go using these, check with your DM. And remember folks, if you can do it, so can the DM. So be careful what you wish for. Now here are the options presented in the DMG for other actions you can take. You can climb onto a larger creature, disarm, mark, overrun, shove aside, and tumble. For the full information on these, please go to Chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, but here's the general gist of it. Now, normally with grappling, you can only grapple a creature up to one size category larger than you, but with climbing onto a larger creature, you can instead make your athletics or acrobatics check, opposed by the creature's acrobatics check this time, to climb on top of it. If you're successful, you'll move into the creature's space and you can move about its body as if it's difficult terrain. Not only that, you'll have advantage to attack it while you're clinging onto it. Now, the larger creature can use its action to try and dislodge you. This will be the same check as grappling, and whether it can attack you without dislodging you will depend where you are. For example, if you're on its back between its shoulder blades, not a high chance of it being able to hit you. Next, you have disarming, which is another special option which replaces an attack. You'll target an item that a creature is holding and make a weapon attack, ranged or melee, against it, and the creature will oppose using their athletics or acrobatics check. If you win the contest, then they drop whatever they were holding. Now, the player's handbook mentions that on their turn, each creature can interact with one object for free as part of their movement or their action. Typically, this is drawing your weapon before you attack, or opening an unlocked door as you move through it. This is an exhaustive list, and the player's handbook itself, it gives you a big list of things that you can do. I'm talking about this now because if you simply disarm an opponent, they can obviously just pick up their weapon or whatever item it was on their turn. However, if you use your free object interaction and kick that object away or even step on it, then that creature is going to either have to move towards where that object is, try and contest you to get it, or they'll have to choose something else to do. Either way, it's good for you. Next up, we have marking. I do not condone the use of marking. I think it's stupid and I don't like it. I think it's a leftover mechanic from 4th edition that the writers of 5th ed have left in as an option. If you want to use marking, you can find it in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Overrunning, however, is something I do condone. Normally, you can't move through a hostile creature's space, but with the overrunning option, you can. How it works is you make an athletics check opposed by that creature's athletics check, and if you win, you get to move through its space once on your turn. Now, if you're larger than the creature you're trying to overrun, then you'll have advantage on that check. If you're smaller, then you'll have disadvantage. The opposing creature will always be rolling normally unless they have something else which gives them advantage or disadvantage. And overrunning can be performed as either an action or a bonus action. Very useful in case you want to overrun something and still use your action to attack or cast a spell. Now, the shove aside option is pretty much the same as the shove option from the player's handbook, but instead of shoving them 5 feet away, you'll be moving them 5 feet to another space that's within your reach. On top of that, if you're the one doing the shoving, you will have disadvantage to your athletics check, but it can be used, for example, if you have your back to a wall and you want to move a creature to be in your way as cover. And finally, tumbling is just the dexterous version of overrunning. Instead of using athletics, both creatures use their acrobatics check, and once again, if you succeed, you can move through that creature's space once on your turn. Whew. So, that was a lot. But wait, there's more. By combining some of these options, you can get some pretty creative combos going. Now, this is what it might look like if you put it all together. Now, going back to the narration at the beginning of the video, let's assume you're a 5th level fighter, so you have access to multi-attack. The first thing you do is you make the search action. You look around and see what might be able to give you an advantage. Now, not only is there a conveniently placed well, there is also scaffolding from a building under renovation. Now, your rogue takes a disengage action to move away from the ruffian that they squared up against, and they duck into an alleyway. Being a rogue, they also use their cunning action to hide as a bonus action. Your cleric, having the loudest mouth, finds himself surrounded. Feeling threatened, he decides to go on the defensive and take the dodge action. Your wizard gives the cleric a look which can only mean a fireball is coming. He readies his action to cast fireball when the cleric is out of harm's way. The cleric stares daggers at him. The ruffian in front of you sees that you're distracted and takes the opportunity to disarm you. Not only that, he kicks away your longsword so you can't grab it up immediately. No matter, you're a resourceful fellow, so use your now free hand to grapple him, replacing one of your attacks, and you drag him over to that well. He stares you in the eyes and says, "This is madness." You respond in the only way that is appropriate and take the shove action to kick him down the well.
This is Sparta!
Your rogue ends up being cut off in the alleyway, and he uses the tumble action to move through the squares of one of his opponents, and then he uses his cunning action to dash and make his way back around to the fight. Your cleric curses at the wizard. He then takes a disengage action to avoid any attacks of opportunity coming his way, and then he overruns one of the opponents. Luckily for him, his check succeeds as a fireball lands right behind him, triggered by the wizard's readied action. Your wizard uses a free object interaction to pull out a wand, and feeling sorry for the cleric, uses his action to pull out a healing potion in case there was any damage. Two ruffians square up against you now, and one of them takes the help action to give their companion advantage when they attack you. Their companion gets through your armor. Mistake. Nobody makes you bleed your own blood.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
It's your turn now to use the shove aside action on one of the ruffians, and into the well he goes. You grapple the other ruffian and start dragging him towards a scaffolding, where your wizard's fireball has already done significant damage. You move up to one of his singed but still alive companions and action surge. You use one of your attacks to shove the burning ruffian right into the scaffolding, which brings it all down on top of him. You decide you're going to retain the one that you've already got grappled, and you use the shove action to bring him prone. At this point, he's prone, and with no movement speed, he can't stand up. Suddenly, you hear whistles blowing, and convenient example-sized hill giant guards are sprinting towards you. One of them grapples you and yells that you are under arrest. Your rogue sighs as he uses his action to climb onto one of the giants and uses his bonus action to dash, giving him the movement speed he needs to leap onto a rooftop and sprint away as the giant narrowly misses its attack of opportunity. Your cleric casts Thunderwave using his Tempest Domain spell to blast away the giant that has you grappled. He uses the rest of his movement to chase after the rogue down the alleyway. Your wizard casts Invisibility and walks away. You stare at the ruffian that you still have grappled, and for a moment you consider attacking him and using the mark option. Then you decide the mark option is stupid, release the grapple, take the dash action, and chase after your companions. Just another day in town for you and your party. So that's everything for today's video. If you found the information useful or just enjoyed the storytelling, please consider giving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'll be aiming to release one video a week. And let me know in the comments below what are some of the most badass non-attacking actions that you guys have taken, and I will see you guys next time.